Ringo Starr spent a lifetime smiling for the world. But behind that easygoing peace and love persona lived a man shaped by wounds he never fully confessed. For decades, he carried a private bitterness toward someone who once stood close enough to be family, someone whose choices carved a scar deeper than any insult from the press. The man known for calm and humor finally admitted that one name haunted him more than all others. When you hear who it is and the betrayal behind it, you will see the luckiest drummer in the world in a completely different light. The insecurity of the replacement. Ringo Starr was born Richard Starkey in wartime Liverpool, a child whose life was defined by sickness. At 6, peritonitis nearly killed him. At 13, tuberculosis locked him in a sanatorium for 2 years. These lost years left him academically behind and socially withdrawn. What saved him was a small drum given to him by nurses, a distraction that became a lifeline. By 1962, the Beatles had raw energy but lacked a rhythmic foundation. When they replaced Pete Best with Ringo, the fans embraced him, but the industry did not. Headlines mocked him as a lucky passenger. Critics claimed he could only keep time. Even his debut was marred by humiliation. During the Love Me Do sessions, producer George Martin brought in session drummer Andy White because he didn't trust Ringo yet. Ringo later admitted the sting lingered for decades. "I made him apologize every day." This was the seed of his lifelong insecurity, the feeling that he was needed, but never truly respected. George Harrison, the pain of silence. Among those who wounded Ringo, the pain caused by George Harrison was the most unexpected. George wasn't cruel or loud. His weapon was distance. In the early years, Ringo and George were the bottom half of the hierarchy, bonding over being overshadowed by the Lennon-McCartney powerhouse. But as the 60s progressed, George began turning to outside legends like Eric Clapton and Bob Dylan. The breaking point for Ringo came in 1968 during the recording of While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Instead of relying on his bandmate, George invited Eric Clapton to play the lead. To Ringo, the message was devastating. Even within his family, he was replaceable. After the breakup, Ringo half-jokingly told George, "You've got the whole world to work with except me." George only smiled politely. That silence hurt more than any shouting match. John Lennon, the breaking of the bond. Ringo idolized John Lennon's courage and wit. Standing behind John on stage felt like standing behind a force of nature. But everything changed in 1968 when John and Yoko Ono became an inseparable unit. Ringo initially respected Yoko, but she soon began critiquing his drumming in the studio. In the past, John would have defended his drummer. Instead, John turned coldly to Ringo and said, "Just keep it even. That's enough." The room went cold. It was a signal that John no longer saw Ringo as a partner, but as a utility. Ringo watched as John's obsession with his new life burned the band's brotherhood to the ground. The loss was profound. He hadn't just lost a bandmate, but a leader he trusted with his life. Paul McCartney, the studio dictator. If John's wound was emotional, Paul McCartney's was professional. Paul was the perfectionist whose drive eventually became a studio dictatorship. During the White Album sessions, Paul's micromanagement reached a fever pitch. He would demand Ringo play a part dozens of times, only to push Ringo off the stool and play the drums himself. For Ringo, it was 1962 all over again. He felt like a replaceable cog in a machine he helped build. Ringo famously walked out for 2 weeks, and while the band begged him to return with flowers and apologies, the crack never truly healed. Though they are close today, Ringo never forgot the feeling of being treated like an amateur by his best friend. The Outsiders, arrogance and chaos. While the Beatles provided the deepest cuts, Outsiders added fuel to Ringo's bitterness during the royal time of Hollywood. Jim Morrison. Ringo despised Morrison's performance of destruction. Having fought for his life as a sick child, Ringo had no patience for Morrison's drunken antics. Peter Sellers. While filming The Magic Christian, Sellers treated Ringo like supporting furniture. When Ringo offered a creative suggestion, Sellers snapped, "You stick to your drums and I'll take care of the movies." the one man Ringo truly hated. Despite the ego clashes with Paul or the silence from George, there was only one man Ringo Starr admitted he could never forgive. This man didn't play an instrument. He played the Beatles against each other. That man was Alan Klein. After the death of manager Brian Epstein, the Beatles were a ship without a captain. In stepped Klein, a smooth-talking hustler who promised to fix their finances. Ringo, desperate for stability, trusted him. But Klein was a shark who studied the band's fault lines. He fueled the 3-against-1 battles, isolating Paul and encouraging the others to sign disastrous contracts. He exploited their weakest moments for his own leverage. By the time he was fired in 1973, the damage was irreversible. The brotherhood was shattered, and the lawsuits would last for years. What do you think? Now that you've seen behind the famous smile, who do you think left the deepest scar on Ringo's heart? Was it the control of McCartney, the silence of Harrison, or the greed of Alan Klein? Tell us in the comments below. If you want to discover more untold truths from the royal time of Hollywood, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Hit that bell notification